Book 2. The Book of the Statesman. Now, from his cycle sleepless and vast, round the dance of the earth globe, gold Hyperion rose in the wake of the dawn, like the eyeball flaming of God, revealed by his uplifted, luminous eyelid. Troy he beheld, and he viewed the transient labour of mortals. All her marble beauty and pomp were laid bare to the heavens. Sunlight streamed into Ilion, waking the voice of her gardens. Amorous, seized on her ways, lived glad in her plains and her pastures, kissed her leaves into brightness of green. As a lover, the last time yearns to the beauty desired, that again shall not wake to his kisses, so over Ilion doomed leaned the yearning immense of the sunrise. She, like a wordless marble memory dreaming forever, lifted the gaze of her perishable immortality sunwards. All her human past aspired in the clearness eternal. Temples of Phryx and Dardanus, touched with the gold of the morning, columns triumphant of Ilus, domes of their greatness enamoured, stones that intended to live, and her citadel climbed up to heaven, white like the soul of the Titan Laomedon, claiming his kingdoms. Watched with alarm by the gods as he came. Her bosom maternal thrilled to the steps of her sons, and a murmur began in her high roads. Life renewed its ways, which death and sleep cannot alter. Life, that pursuing her boundless march to a goal which we know not, ever her own law obeys, not our hopes, who are slaves of her heartbeats. Then as now, men walked in the round which the gods have decreed them, eagerly turning their eyes to the lure and the tool and the labour. Chained is their gaze to the span in front, to the gulfs they are blinded, meant for their steps. The seller opened his shop, and the craftsman bent o'er his instruments, handling the work he never would finish, busy as if their lives were forever, today in its evening, sure of tomorrow. The hammers clanged, and the voice of the markets waking desired its daily rumour. Nor only the craftsman, only the hopes of the earth, but the hearts of her votaries, kneeling, came to her marble shrines, and upraised to our helpers eternal, missioned the prayer and the hymn, or, silent, subtly adoring, ventured upwards in incense. Loud too the clash of the cymbals filled all the temples of Troy with the cry of our souls to the azure, prayers breathed in vain, and a cry that fell back with fate for its answer. Children laughed in her doorways, joyous they played, by their mothers smiled on still, but their tender bosoms unknowing awaited Grecian spear points, sharpened by fate for their unripe bosoms. Tasks of the slave increase. Like bees round their honey-filled dwellings, murmuring swarmed to the wellheads the large-eyed daughters of Troia, deep-bosomed, limbed like the gods, glad faces of old that were sentient, rapturous flowers of the soul, bright bodies that lived under darkness, nobly massed of their locks, like day under night made resplendent. Daughters divine of the earth, in the ages when heaven was our father. They, round Troy's wellheads, flower-like, satisfied mourn with their beauty, or in the river baring their knees to the embrace of the coolness, dipped their white feet in the clutch of his streams, in the haste of Scamander. Lingering this last time, with laughter and talk of the day and the morrow, leaned to the hurrying flood. All his swiftness raced down to meet them, crowding his channel with dancing billows and turbulent murmurs. Xanthus primeval met these waves of our life in its passing, even as of old he had played with Troy's ancient fair generations, mingling his deathless voice with the laughter and joy of their ages, laughter of dawns that are dead, and a joy that the earth has rejected. Still his whispering trees remembered their bygone voices. Hast thou forgotten, O river of Troy? Still we can hear them now, if we listened long in our souls, the bygone voices. Earth in her fibres remembers. The breezes are stored with our echoes. Over the stone-hewn steps for their limpid orient waters, joyous they leaned, and they knew not yet of the wells of Mycenae, drew not yet from Eurotas the jar for an alien master, mixed not Peneus yet with their tears. From the clasp of the current, now in their groups they arose, and dispersed through the streets and the byways, turned from the freedom of earth to the works and the joy of the hearthside. Lightly they rose and returned through the lanes of the wind-haunted city, swaying with rhythmical steps, while the anklets jangled and murmured. Silent temples saw them passing. You too, O houses, built with such hopes by mortal man for his transient lodging. Fragrant the gardens strewed, on dark tresses their white smiling jasmines, dropped like a silent boon of purity soft from the branches. Flowers by the wayside were budding, cries flew winged around the treetops. Bright was the glory of life in Ilion, city of Priam. Thrice to the city the doom blast published its solemn alarm. Blast of the trumpets that called to assembly clamoured through Troia thrice, and were still. From garden and highway, from palace and temple, turned like a steed to the trumpet, rejoicing in war and ambition, gathered alert to the call, the democracy hated of heaven. First in their ranks, upbearing their age as Atlas his heavens, eagle-crested, with hoary hair like the snow upon Ida, Ilion's senators paced, Antenor and wide-browed Anchises. Athamas, famous for ships and the war of the waters, Trias, still whose name was remembered by Oxus, the Orient river, Astyochus and Eucalogon, dateless Palacus, Aetor, Aspetus, who of the secrets divine knew all, and was silent, Ascanus, Ilionus, Alcesiphron, Horus Aretus, Priam, and Priam's sons. Aeneas, Leonine, striding, followed by the heart of a nation adoring her, Penthesilea. All that was noble in Troy attended the regal procession, marching in front and behind, and the tramp of their feet was a rhythm tuned to the arrogant fortunes of Ilion, ruled by incarnate demigods. Ilus and Phrix and Dardanus, Tros of the conquests, Tros and far-ruling Laomedon, who to his soul's strong labour drew down the sons of the skies, and was served by the ageless immortals. Into the agora, vast and aspirant, besieged by its columns, bathed and anointed they came, like gods in their beauty and grandeur. Last, like the roar of the winds, came trampling the surge of the people, clamorous, led by a force obscure to its ultimate fatal session of wrath. The violent, mighty democracy hastened. Thousands of ardent lives, with a heart yet unslain in their bosoms, lifted to heaven the voice of man and his far-spreading rumour. Singing, the young men with banners marched in their joyous processions, trod in martial measure, or dancing with lyrical paces, chanted the glory of Troy and the wonderful deeds of their fathers. Into the columned assembly, where Ilus had gathered his people, thousands and thousands, the tramp and the murmur poured. In their armoured, glittering tribes, they were ranked, an untamable, high-hearted nation, waiting the voice of its chiefs. Some gazed on the greatness of Priam ancient, remote from their days, the last of the gods who were passing, left like a soul uncompanioned in worlds where his strength shall not conquer. Soul, like a column gigantic, alone on a desolate hillside, older than mortals he seemed, and mightier. Many in anger aimed their hostile looks, where calm, though by heaven abandoned, left to his soul and his lucid mind, and its thoughts unavailing, leading the age-chilled few, whom the might of their hearts had not blinded. Famous and tenor was seated, the fallen, unpopular statesman. Wisest of speakers in Troy, but rejected, stoned, and dishonoured. Silent, aloof from the people he sat, a heart full of ruins. Low was the rumour that swelled like the hum of the bees in a meadow, when with the thirst of the honey they swarm on the thyme and the linden, hundreds humming and flitting, till all that place is a murmur. Then, from his seat like a tower arising, Priam the monarch, slowly erect in his vast tranquillity, silenced the people. Lonely, august he stood, like one whom death has forgotten. Reared like a column of might and of silence over the assembly. So Olympus rises, alone with his snows, into heaven. Crowned were his heights by the locks that slept like the mass of the snow swathe, clothing his giant shoulders. His eyes of deep meditation, eyes that beheld now the end, and accepted it like the beginning, gazed on the throng of the people as on a pomp that is painted. Slowly he spoke, like one who is far, from the scenes where he sojourns. Leader of Ilion, hear, O dear Phoebus, thou who hast summoned Troy in her people, arise. Say wherefore thou callest us. Evil speak thou or good, thou canst speak that only. Necessity fashions all that the unseen eye has beheld. Speak then to the Trojans, say on this dawn of her making, what issue of death or of triumph fate in her suddenness puts to the unseeing? What summons to perish send to this nation men who revolt and gods who are hostile? Rising, dear Phoebus spoke, in stature less than his father, less in his build, yet the mightiest man and tallest whom coursers bore, or his feet to the fight since Ajax fell by the Xanthus. People of Ilion, long have you fought with the gods and the Argives, slaying and slain, but the years persist and the struggle is endless. Fainting your helpers cease from the battle. The nations forsake you. Asia, weary of strenuous greatness, ease enamoured, suffers the foot of the Greek to tread on the beaches of Troas. Yet have we striven for Troy and for Asia, men who desert us. Not for ourselves alone have we fought, for our life of a moment. Once if the Greeks were triumphant, once if their nations were marshalled under some far-seeing chief, Odysseus, Peleus, Achilles, not on the banks of Scamander and skirts of the azure Aegean, fainting would seize the audacious emprise, the titanic endeavour. Tigris would flee from their tread, and Indus be drunk by their courses. Now in these days, when each sun goes marvelling down that Troy stands yet suffering, smiting, alive, though doomed to all eyes that behold her, flinging back death from her walls, and bronze to the shock and the clamour, driven by a thought that has risen in the dawn from the tents on the beaches, great Alcibius' chariot waits in the Ilion portals. Voice of the Hellene demigod challenges timeless Troia. Thus has he said to us, know you not doom when she walks in your heavens? Feel'st thou not then thy set, O sun, who illuminate nature? None can escape the wheel of the gods and its vast revolutions. Fate demands the joy and pride of the earth for the Argive, Asia's wealth for the lust of the young barbarian nations. Sink, eclipsed in the circle vast of my radiance. Troia, joined to my northern realms, deliver the east to the Hellene. Ilion, to Hellas be yoked. Wide Asia, fringe thou, Peneus. Lay down golden Helen, a sacrifice lovely and priceless, cast by your weakness and fall on immense necessity's altar. Yield to my longing, Polyxena, Hecuba's deep-bosomed daughter, her whom my heart desires. She shall leave with you peace, and her healing joy of mornings secure, and death repulsed from your heart sides. Yield these and live, else I leap on you, fate in front, Hades behind me. Bound to the gods by an oath, I return not again from the battle, till from high Ida my shadow extends to the Mede and Euphrates. Let not your victories deceive you, steps that defeat has imagined. Hear not the voice of your heroes. Their fame is a trumpet in Hades. Only they conquer, while yet my horses champ free in their stables. Earth cannot long resist the man whom heaven has chosen. Gods with him walk, his chariot is led, his arm is assisted. High rings the Hellene challenge. Earth waits for the Ilion answer. Always man's fate hangs poised on the flitting breath of a moment. Called by some word, by some gesture it leaps, then 'tis graven, 'tis granite. Speak, by what gesture high shall the stern gods recognize Troia? Sons of the ancients, race of the gods, inviolate city, firmer my spear shall I grasp, or cast from my hand and forever? Search in your hearts if your fathers still dwell in them, children of Teucer. So Deiphobus spoke, and the nation heard him in silence, awed by the shadow vast of doom, indignant with fortune. Calm from his seat, Antenor arose, as a wrestler arises, tamer of beasts in the cage of the lions, eyeing the monsters brilliant, tawny of mane, and he knows, if his courage waver, falter his eye, or his nerve be surprised by the gods that are hostile, death will leap on him there in the crowded, helpless arena. Fearless Antenor arose, and a murmur swelled in the meeting, cruel and threatening, hoarse like the voice of the sea upon boulders. Hisses thrilled through the roar, and one man cried to another, "Lo, he will speak of peace, who has swallowed the gold of Achaia. Surely the people of Troy are eunuchs, who suffer Antenor rising unharmed in the agora. Are there not stones in the city? Surely the steel grows dear in the land, when a traitor can flourish." Calm, like a god or a summit, Antenor stood in the uproar. But as he gazed on his soul, came memory, dimming the vision. For he beheld his past, and the agora crowded and cheering, passionate, full of delight, while Antenor spoke to the people. Troy that he loved, and his fatherland, proud of her eloquent statesman. Tears to his eyes came thick, and he gripped at the staff he was holding. Mounting, his eyes met fully the tumult. Mournful and thrilling, conquering men's hearts, with a note of doom in its sorrowful sweetness. People of Ilion, blood of my blood, O race of Antenor, once will I speak, though you slay me. For who would shrink from destruction, knowing that soon of his city and nation, his house and his dear ones, all that remains will be a couch of trampled ashes? Athene, slain today may I join the victorious souls of our fathers. Not for the anguish be kept, and the irremediable weeping. Loud will I speak the word that the gods have breathed in my spirit. Strive this last time to save the death destined. Who are these clamour? Hear him not. Gold of the Greeks bought his words, and his throat is accursed. Troy, whom my counsels made great, hast thou heard this roar of their frenzy tearing thy ancient bosom? Is it thy voice, heaven abandoned, my mother? O my country, O my creatress, earth of my longings, earth where our fathers lie, in their sacred ashes undying. Memoried temples shelter the shrines of our gods, and the altars pure where we worship. The beautiful children smile on us passing. Women divine and the men of our nation. O land, where our childhood played at a mother's feet, mid the trees and the hills of our country, hoping our manhood toiled, and our youth had its seekings for Godhead. Thou, for our age keep'st repose, with the love and the honour of kinsmen. Silent our relics shall lie, with the city guarding our ashes. Earth, who hast fostered our parents, earth, who hast given us our offspring, soil that created our race, where fed from the bosom of nature, happy our children shall dwell in the storied homes of their fathers, souls that our souls have stamped, sweet forms of ourselves when we perish. Once, even then, have they seen thee in their hearts, or dreamed of thee ever, who from thy spirit revolt, and only thy name make an idol, hating thy faithful sons and the cult of thy ancient ideal? Wake, O my mother divine, remember thy gods and thy wisdom. Silence the tongues that degrade thee, prophets profane of thy Godhead. Madman, to think that a man who has offered his life for his country, served her with words and deeds, and adored with victories and triumphs, ever could think of enslaving her breast to the heel of a foeman? Surely Antenor's halls are empty. He begs from the stranger, leading his sons and his children's sons by the hand in the market, showing his rags, since his need is so bitter of gold from the Argives.